Housemasters, the hard knock school of everything new construction and remodeling, powered by Home Projects.
Welcome to Housemasters, presented by Home Projects. Hi, I'm Steve, and as always, I'm joined by my colleague John. Before we get into our episode tonight, we ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and the software where you might be listening to this podcast. Hit like, hit the little bell, do anything in the software that allows you to make sure that you're getting all the content that we publish on a regular basis, and that you're aware of the channel and can share it as needed. This is supposed to be an organic discussion between me, John, and you, and vice versa. Obviously, you can't talk along with us in these videos, but we do encourage you to leave comments in our YouTube channel or in the podcast software that you're listening to. Write us a review, give us 5 stars. We'd really appreciate it. And of course, if you have any real questions you'd like to answer offline, go to our website, homeprojects.com. And you can find our email addresses there, and you can reach out to John and I directly. We're more than happy to answer any questions you might have. And finally, John and I are bringing you this information free of charge, and we have asked in previous videos, and we'll continue to ask for your support to make a donation to this cause. You can go to our website, again, homeprojects.com. Click on the donate button and use PayPal Donate or GoFundMe to send us some money to help support this worthy cause. And we also have a donate button on our YouTube page here on the channel directly that you can donate, again, through GoFundMe. Very important. We appreciate your support. John, we are here to talk tonight about the pros and cons of online lead generation. Usually a website, sometimes they're apps, but both of you and I in our business as owners of small businesses have used lead generation software, to the good and to the bad. I'll let you start this off, and I'll chime in. I've got a few stories of my own. Before we get too far, we do want to make sure everyone knows that we're not here to recommend certain websites. We're going to mention some brand names because John and I have used them and we've been successful with them. But this is really just information about the pros and cons of them, both from the homeowner side as well as the industry pro, the contractor. We're going to talk about both sides of our mouth just a little bit here as we kind of share this information with both sides. But with having said that, John, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
All righty. Steve is correct. When I first started let's speak in general terms. When you first start a business, a lot of people are doing it on a shoestring, don't have a whole lot of money. And so you're looking for your most effective yet least expensive marketing options that you can find. And back when I opened my business back in 2008, you had 2 prevalent lead generation companies out there. There's been a lot more added to the online sphere, but the 2 main ones at the time were Home Advisor, actually Service Magic, and Angie's List. Yep. And I used to receive leads from both of them. Back in the day, as a home performance contractor, we were looking for leads under home energy audits, insulation, air sealing, duct sealing, a number of different categories. And then the most prevalent or the most common trades, usually the way it works for a contractor with a Home Advisor, or at least it used to, was they would charge you a particular amount for that particular lead. So in other words, if somebody went online to Service Magic at the time, .com, and they typed in that they lived in X zip code and they wanted insulation in that zip code for their home, The second they hit submit after putting their contact information in, that lead would end up being filtered out to 3 to 6 contractors that did installation in the particular geographic market. The downside to it was, again, you're a small business. It might be 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you're sitting at the kitchen table with a homeowner,
or in a crawl space,
or in a crawl space, or an attic, and your phone goes off with an 888 number from Service Magic. Well, you're not going to talk to a customer when you're sitting in the middle of an attic or when you're with a homeowner. So you push it off to voicemail, and then an hour later you get back in the truck and you call that particular lead, and then 3 other contractors have already talked to that homeowner. So what it ended up being was a race to the phone. And the first person to ever get that person to answer the phone was usually the one that was going out there to give them a price.
Yep.
Angie's List, on the other hand, at the time, was a membership-based platform. And that membership base was not only on the homeowner side, but then you would pay advertising costs to, kind of like you do to Google with AdWords. You would pay an X amount as a contractor, and that amount would be determined by virtue of what trade you were in, to get you on the top of the list. So if somebody typed in replacement windows and you did replacement windows and wanted to be qualified for that particular lead, you would pay them X amount of dollars per month, and then you would be at the top of the list for your geographic market for replacement windows. On the homeowner side, they would pay anywhere between $9 and $12 at the time a month to have access to trade contractors of practically any sort in the home. It could be anything from a landscaper to a replacement window contractor to a roofing contractor to a siding contractor to an HVAC company, a plumber, an electrician. It could be a number of different trades. But they had constant access by paying that $12 a month to put their information in on Angie's List website, and then they could call a contractor directly that would pop up on their screen. The benefit to Angie's List back in the day was if you had any salesmanship to you whatsoever as a contractor, you were probably 90% assured that you were going to get that job. And the reason being was there was an added loyalty base to Angie's List that there wasn't necessarily on the Service Magic / Home Advisor side. Okay. Angie's List, I used to test my closing percentage on leads that would come in, and at one point my closing percentage was like at 94% from leads that came in from Angie's List. My closing percentage with Service Magic / Home Advisor was like 22% in the same year. So you had to go through a lot more leads with Service Magic or Home Advisor than you did on the Angie's List side to get the same amount of sales revenue. Okay. Now, let's jump over to the homeowner side a bit so you understand exactly how those particular two models work. Okay. It used to be, like I said, you go into their particular website, you would type in your information, all your contact information, name, address, phone number, email address, and you'd lay out what services that you were looking for. You would hit submit, and the little that you would end up knowing, because your phone started ringing off the hook, but that information was being filtered out to 3, 5, 6 contractors all at once, and then all of them were racing to the phone to call you to get a time set up to put an estimate together for you for that service. What you didn't know is Home Advisor was also charging those 6 contractors maybe $30 each for that same lead. So when you went in to put your information in, your name was worth $30, say for an installation lead. It was worth $75 for a window lead. Or a siding lead might be $110. It all had to do with the price of the average job. That's what the lead cost, how it was determined.
So what if they called like a general contractor and they're going to build a $500,000 house? What would that lead go for?
I never tried it, but I'm sure it was probably over $100. I never wanted to build a house, so I never tried to get a lead from it. They were so in other words, your name and your contact information was worth anywhere from 15 to $150 times the amount of contractors they fished that information out to. Okay. On Angie's List side, you were paying your monthly fee, and then you got to pick and choose as to which contractor that you wanted to actually call on the list. And on Angie's List, you would have a 0 to 5 star rating. And most of the time people would call the 5 stars before they'd call 3.7, just like you do on Google today.
Yep.
It came to be where Home Advisors, being that you had to race to the phone all the time, it just ended up not being a means that I wanted to get my leads from anymore. So I dropped Home Advisor and I stuck with Angie's List. Well, then I got into some, pay-per-click, with Google, and I had my Google business profile and,
AdWords.
All those things, AdWords. So I had other means that were actually supplanting the leads that I was missing on the Home Advisor side. All knowing that I was going to still get X amount of leads. Usually with Angie's List in this area, I was getting anywhere between 12 and 15 leads a month.
Now, was AdWords actually sending you leads, or were people organically finding you through the search engine and calling you more of a cold call than a
so
lead?
they'd go to Google and they would pull up Insulation Greensboro.
Yeah.
Or Home Energy Audit Greensboro or Deck Greensboro. And, it was obviously when you have a website, you have to optimize that website or else nobody can find you. And the way you optimize it is using keywords in your web pages.
Yep.
And that helps you get higher and higher up on the Google rankings. So when you actually are searched for, you get at the top of the list that people are going to, most people, when they go to the internet, in fact, I can't remember the actual statistic, but it's something crazy like 80% of people that use the internet don't understand the idea of scrolling down a page. They just call what shows up on the screen.
Yeah, and those are the people that paid for your lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the old model of Angie's List. Okay. And Service Magic and Home Advisor. That's now changed. In 2017, Home Advisor purchased or merged with Angie's List. So now you have Home Advisor and Angie. Angie dropped the E, so now it's A-N-G-I, and then you've got Home Advisor. From what I understand, they've molded their lead generation into two separate platforms, where one is more membership based, the other is more the old Home Advisor way. But if you look at discussion threads online when it comes to contractors, the Home Advisor side and the Angie side have both, from a quality standpoint, both dropped in quality in terms of the type of lead that a contractor gets. Okay. A lot of times I hear on these discussion threads that it's nothing but a bunch of tire kickers.
Yep.
Or they will they'll call the phone number 3 seconds after it comes through on the email, and nobody ever answers and nobody ever responds to the phone call if you leave a message. So what ends up happening is you end up spending this money times however many leads that you get, determined by whatever trade that you're in, and you're not getting any return on the investment. Now, the other thing that's kind of strange about Angie's List and Home Advisor is the fact that certain trades work better than other trades do. You mentioned earlier, Steve, home builders. Most home builders don't get their leads through Angie's List or Angie. Most architects do not get their leads through a lead generation service like Home Advisor or Angie.
No, I'll talk a little bit about that here in a little bit.
But they do get their leads, or an HVAC company will get their leads through there. A window company will. A siding company will. A landscaping company will. If it's a home service related business, they tend to be much more effective leads, I guess would be the word, where you have a much higher capability of actually closing that business.
Higher volume.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So since that merger, there have been a number of things that have occurred that I have actually seen online that I do not like. Back in the wintertime, I pulled up because we needed repair done for our gas fireplace logs. I pulled up gas fireplace repair, Greensboro, North Carolina. And the first website that comes up was X name. I'm not even going to name the name. So you open up this website and it's a nice website. You know, it's all properly organized and, you know, it's talking about their services and services we offer in geographic areas that we cover and this and that, so on and so forth. But if you scroll all the way down that page in the small print, it was actually Home Advisor. It was Home Advisor's website, and they were disguising themselves as being a local company who did gas fireplace logs and did repair for them. And if you go and you hit a link on the homepage,
what do you need,
it
babe?
shows like 100 different services that they do. Not only fireplace repair, but window replacement, roofing replacement, siding, landscaping, mulch, blinds, you name it. Whatever home service you can think of was listed on that second page. And it was Home Advisor acting as a company to drive leads to other contractors. That's dishonest as far as I'm concerned.
Because you didn't intend to use their service to find somebody. You got bait and switched. You thought you were talking to a legitimate company, but they were actually selling your information to lots of other people that you weren't intending to talk to.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know websites enough now where before I make a phone call, I'll scroll the website and something was off to me when I was on this website. So that's why I scrolled down, and sure enough, I saw on the very bottom corner of the page in small writing it said something about Home Advisor.
Right.
But your normal layman is going to go in there. They're going to put gas fireplace repair, Greensboro, North Carolina, and this website's going to pop up as number one. Home Advisors / Service Magic and Angie are often your number one search item on any Google search. I don't care what trade it is. And the reason why is because they put tens of millions of dollars into marketing and AdWords. So I don't care, as a independent contractor, you could be a $4 or $5 million replacement contractor doing siding, windows, and roofing. and you have a marketing budget of $250,000 a year, you can almost be guaranteed that you're not going to be number one on the Google search. Why? Because Home Advisor / Angie is going to be.
Yep.
So your normal layman goes, clicks on that first website that they see, and they see this company website. Problem is, it's not a company. And if you're not actually trained to look at this particular website, and you haven't perused websites of competitors and, done your own optimization of your own website in the past, you wouldn't know to think twice about it. And that's where the dishonesty is. That was a complete turnoff. In fact, I remember the night that I did it, I texted you, Steve.
You sure did, yeah.
And I sent you the actual link to it, and I said, show me what's wrong with this thing. And you instantly picked up on it. But, it's just something that, the whole lead generation industry has gone from having a good spirit behind it, from wanting to generate revenue for contractors, to really taking advantage of contractors. You don't know how many times I would get a lead from X town in the area. I'd call the phone number given and find out that they didn't put their information into either of the websites. It was a fake lead.
That they charged you for. Yeah.
And call either one of them and try to get a refund on that lead, see if it happens. They'll fight you tooth and nail.
Yeah.
To keep that charge on your account.
Yep.
Let me give you another little story, and this is going to give you a true inside view of the marketing and what actually happens with contractors that are on each of these platforms. Early on in my business, I had a business partner, and my business partner was a custom builder who was looking to get out of the industry. I actually sold building materials to him, just like I used to, with you, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
And he had another supplier who used to sell him drywall, who got out of the supply business like I had and started his own radiant barrier company. Now, remember, we talked in a previous episode that there were companies out there that did radiant barrier only, and that's all they did. Okay. Well, one day my partner calls me and he says, "Hey, man, I want to meet my supplier over at one of these restaurants. Do you mind meeting me? We'll meet this tomorrow morning." Yeah, I'll meet. So we go out there and meet. We're sitting down for about 15 minutes. And this guy starts asking questions about, how we're getting our leads, this and that, so on and so forth. And I didn't look at him as anything having to do with being a threat, because, we were truly doing full home performance contracting work. We were doing diagnostic audits with infrared scans and blower door tests and duct leakage testing and air balancing testing and, you name it, we were doing it. But then we were also providing the prescriptive work to solve the issues that we found in the particular diagnostics we did. So, I told him, I said, we were getting a lot of our leads from Angie's List and Home Advisor, and, long and short of it, we were drinking coffee with him for about an hour and a half, and broke away and everything. And I called Jay when we got out of the meeting, and I said, there's something fishy about that meeting that I'm just not comfortable with. And he said, "Oh man," he said, "it's nothing, but there's no harm. He's a good guy. I've known him for years." It's like, okay, well, I trust him then. Well, next thing you know, every now and then, about every 2 or 3 weeks, at the time, let me take a step back. At the time when we first started this home performance business, we were actually one of the only home performance contractors in the entire state of North Carolina. I want to say that we were like third. That was BPI certified, ResNet certified, and actually were doing true diagnostic audits at the time. But what I would do is I would go in to both Angie's List and Home Advisor from time to time, and I wanted to see what competitors were out there. So I would go in there and put a fictitious name, with a fictitious phone number, so I could receive the lead contractors that were going to be fished out to.
Yep.
Well, lo and behold, about 2 or 3 weeks after this particular meeting, the guy that we met for coffee that morning, his company is on the list for home energy audits. Well, that was kind of interesting to me. So I called him directly and pretty much gave him, pretty much laid into him. And, Steve, you've known me for a while. When I get that way,
You get that way. Yeah.
it's not pretty. Called him the fraud that he was, got off the phone with him. And I told him, I said, if you're not off of that platform by the end of this week, I said, I'll bury your business. And I think he actually took me for being serious because he was off there the next day. I ended up calling Home Advisor that day, and I said, I need to talk to somebody about your qualifications that you require for contractors that are on your platform. And she says, you need to have a business license and you need to actually pass a criminal background check. I said, what about the certifications that the industry requires to be able to do a diagnostic energy audit? Oh, well, we don't require that. We just require the background check and the business license if it's required by the locality that they live in. I said, so in other words, I could call you this afternoon and say, I want to start getting leads for brick masonry in the entire triad area of North Carolina. And as long as I passed my criminal background check and or had my business license, you would set me up as a brick mason.
You're now a mason. Congratulations, John.
She said, yes, sir, that's true. I said, well, that's the biggest fraud that I've ever seen in my life. I said, you all are marketing yourself online and on TV as fishing out to homeowners, professional, quote unquote, professional contractors. If I don't have any background in brick masonry, I'm not a professional brick mason. You're telling me that I could go and start hanging blinds tomorrow just because I have a license with my city that I reside in. What makes me a professional contractor that hangs blinds? And there was nothing but silence on the air. So that was the first nail in the coffin that led me to getting away from Home Advisor at the time. The other thing was you could end up signing a contract with a homeowner. We had an episode just recently about contracts and what should be included in a contract, not only from a contractor standpoint, but also from a homeowner standpoint. You could have everything detailed in the contract. You could do everything and then above some in that contract. And at the end of the job, the homeowner's giving you a 4-star rating or a 3.7.
Which direction?
It's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. They told me that they were happy with the job. Well, the thing that would always hit you on your rating was there was like 4 or 5 different categories, and they would come up with an average of those categories to give you your overall rating for that job. One of the categories was price. Well, how many people do you know
are happy with that they paid?
Tell anybody that their price is too low.
Yeah.
The price is always too high. And I don't know if you know this or not, Steve. You've never really sat. Oh, yeah, I actually have sat in some sales presentations of mine. But I've actually sat in front of homeowners before and told them before they said it, listen, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I need you to let you know that my price is too high. And the reason why I said that was because they look like a complete idiot if they tell me at the end that my price is too high, because I already told them that.
You disarmed them.
I already disarmed them. So I would literally tell them, hey, my price is too high. A lot of times it actually got me work. It was the smart ass way of saying, don't pull this price is too high crap with me.
Right.
So you're set up where you have 4 or 5 categories there. You could have 5 stars on everything, and then you have a 2 because your price is too high, and you have an overall 3.9 average. Well, that 3.9 average, when you pull up a Google search and Home Advisor or Angie's List next to your contractor, it has that rating next to you.
Yep.
So if you have your overall rating of 3.7 or 3.9, nobody's calling you. So what it ended up being is you were actually losing leads on Google searches by virtue of the rating that you were given by the lead generation service
connected.
that you were using. Exactly. So you have to be extremely careful as a contractor and both as a homeowner when you're using these particular services. For one, as a homeowner, you have to understand that the game that's being played. If you put your name into their platform and you hit submit, that name is being fished out to every, well, not every, but at least 5 or 6 contractors in the area. And they're going to all be trying to give you a call, and they're going to wear your phone line out. But as a contractor, you also need to know the game. For one, that it's a race to the phone. 2, depending on which platform you're using, it might be a high close ratio, it might be a low one. And you got to be prepared for that. Ideally speaking, is once I grew enough where I hired an office manager, I took my phone number off of the accounts, and that way the phone would ring at the office.
In the office.
So she could answer the phone immediately. Because a lot of times what would happen is they would actually call you from the 888 number. If you didn't answer them, then you'd receive your email or your text saying that you've got a lead from Home Advisor. So you got to understand the game that's going on. Now, you have some other lead generation tools and apps out there. House being one of them. HOUZZ.
ZZ, yep.
Thumbtack is another one. Nextdoor.
Yeah.
Nextdoor is an organic lead generation source that I recommend every contractor that's starting out use.
So technically isn't House.
And I don't have the experience with House, but before you go into House, Steve, let me explain how Nextdoor works.
Sure.
Nextdoor is a social media platform that's meant for neighbors and people that live close by to share ideas and what's that?
They share everything from.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. They really do.
Whose dog's barking to who's got the best lemonade that day.
Yeah, it really is. It's soup to nuts on gossip.
It's like Facebook, but concentrated on just your neighbors.
Yeah, it's localized gossip.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So
guilty as charged.
What ends up happening is you go in, you put a topic into Nextdoor, and then all of your neighbors around you in your zip code or your 9 neighborhoods around you go in there and they discuss that particular topic. Well, Nextdoor has a means in there for businesses to advertise.
Correct.
And it's extremely inexpensive if you look at other platforms out there. If you're wanting to be the neighborhood paint contractor, you have the ability to do that for a pretty inexpensive price by advertising on Nextdoor. Okay. I've always said, especially when you're starting out, you want to start local and then build yourself out from there. And the reason why is because when you're working local, you can become the expert for your particular neighborhood, one. But also, you're going to have a much higher capability for referrals. Okay. And a lot of people on Nextdoor know one another. For one, they live in the same neighborhood or the same street. And if they use a particular HVAC contractor and they were happy with them, they go in there and say, well, John with ABC Heating and Cooling was fantastic. And as we spoke about in a previous episode, after that post is made, there's 76 other posts within the next hour listing the HVAC contractor that they use. So it's like a keep up with the Joneses type of thing. But it's a very organic method of getting names for businesses out there. And if you take care of your customers and you build yourself a good relationship with them, they will give your name out.
Absolutely.
And Nextdoor is actually the least expensive method that I've seen out there and the most effective from growing that local base into a larger base eventually. So, again, we're not here to endorse any particular products. We just want you to know the pros and cons for each one of them. Okay. Now, the con to Nextdoor is if you piss off a homeowner, they're going to know about it
immediately
because they're going to go into the thread on Nextdoor and say, hey, John with ABC Heating and Cooling just skirted me after out of $400 and he was in my house for 15 minutes. And then those 76 other people are going to follow in and say, well, you should have called this person. You should have called that person.
List all your competition. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just the way that the platform works. Now, we're going to talk about House.
Yes.
You have experience with House. I didn't have any back in the day.
So the big difference, House is also an organic lead generator. And so House is Houzz, and what it's designed to do is it allows designers, contractors to create portfolios online, what they call idea books. So you upload pictures of your work, sketches, final photographs, whatever, no videos, just static pictures. You upload them to your account, and then when people go online and they want to see what a Cape Cod looks like, they go on there and they type Cape Cod. And everybody who uploaded a picture and tagged it as a Cape Cod, their picture would come up. Almost like a search engine within the lead generation software. And you could scroll through it. And when I was in private practice, I had a company that was on House a lot. And I had a very prominent position there. I won a couple awards, a series of awards for several years of being one of the top producers on House for our general region. And I'll explain in a minute what that meant. But your picture would come up. It would say, Stephen Johnson Architect did this picture, and it would give them a chance to save that picture to their idea book. And it's not downloading the picture. It was taking that website and kind of bookmarking it within your another idea book. So it never left.
Kind of like Pinterest, actually.
Very much like Pinterest. This is the Pinterest. This is a professional designer's Pinterest, but not, instead of sharing pictures of your, your underwater basket weaving and the coaster you made. This is for building, but very much like Pinterest. And Instagram has a component to that too. So you would get a note that says, "Oh, such and such saved your picture to their idea book," and at that point in time, you could go onto House and you could communicate with them in real time, typing to them, and it allowed you to develop a relationship with people. You weren't, of course, as architects and contractors, our volume is low. You were talking about volume earlier. The reason Angie's List didn't work for us is because most people don't go on there looking for an architect. We're not a service provider. We're selling a relationship. We're selling an idea. Ideas, our mental ideas, and so it doesn't flip as quickly as it could with a service provider. But on House, you could go in there and you could talk with people, and I loved that interaction. Much of the reason why I love doing House Masters with you, John, is we get to talk about what we do. And on House, I got to talk about my stuff. I could talk to people and say, "Oh yeah, well, I designed this house 3 or 4 years ago," and they could ask all kinds of questions, and I'd provide the answers. How much did it cost? Where's it built? What kind of materials? And you developed a relationship with people. And then they could follow you just like people do on all the other socials. So and my company had thousands and thousands of followers. People were borrowing my pictures every day. I get a dozen emails a day saying such and such borrowed your picture. And that was great. That was very interactive. You could also go on there, as you know, and go into these chat rooms where people ask questions. So a homeowner could go on there and say, here's a picture of my fireplace. I want to do a new mantle and I want to paint it and I want to put new gas logs in. What do you think about this? And that was their way of inviting all of the designers on House to come in and give their 2 cents. Now, the chances of you getting a job off of that were very low, mainly because these people were all over the world. I'm not, I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm talking to the guy in Oregon. I'm not going to do any work with the guy in Oregon. But House saw that communication and said, oh, wait, this guy in Greensboro, he's very active on House. Maybe we should send some leads his way, because House had a lead generator. So people could go in and say, I'm looking for a professional architect in Winston-Salem or a professional architect in Greensboro. And I would pop up a lot. And I never paid a dime for this. It was all based on my interaction with House. House said, oh, this guy is providing us a lot of content, and we're going to give him some leads. And I got good leads that way. A lot of them were still tire kicking. Most people who go on House are looking for ideas, and because they're looking for ideas, they haven't sat down and defined a budget or a schedule or any of that stuff. So you were very, very early in the process with them. So you had to know that. You had to understand that it could be another 6 to 8 months, a year before these people were really serious. But I have several homes in my portfolio that were designed and built because of people I met on House. Now, House also now has a lead generation software, much like Angie's List, where you can pay for that kind of stuff. Obviously, I'm not doing that anymore, so I didn't do that then. I don't think I would do that now, mainly because there's another search engine out there called Thumbtack that's actually quite good. And I was very, very successful with Thumbtack. So Thumbtack, again, I'm not advertising for these companies. I'm just telling you my experience with them. Thumbtack has its good and its bad, just like your experience with Angie's List, John. Thumbtack allows someone to go onto the site and say, Greensboro, architect in Greensboro, and it says, what kind of project are you doing? Residential, commercial, what's the general price range, and your time frame. Now, as a Thumbtack member, this is a paid membership now. It's no longer like House, where you're kind of doing it for free through interactive texting and so forth, relationship building. With House, you were paying for it, and the average lead was about $25 to $30. But for an architect or a contractor, that was dirt cheap, because most of our fees, our fees could be in the tens of thousands of dollars. So paying $35 for the opportunity to talk to someone who could turn into a $10,000 to $30,000 lead, yeah, sign me up. I'll do it every day, twice on Tuesdays. You know what I mean? So Thumbtack, I was prolific on. I was considered a Thumbtack pro. The homeowners would go onto the website. They'd look for, they'd say architect in Greensboro, and they'd be presented with 3 or 4 architects, and I would generally be on top, because they also ranked you based on how quickly you responded. Talk about chasing the phone. How quickly you responded, how many jobs you closed off of that response, and how often you interact with the people who talk to you. And this is all chat based. So Thumbtack will send me a text message that says you have a lead, and you go to the website and it says, such and such is doing this project. It's in this price range, and they've reached out to 4 pros. And we recommend you text back to them within 2 hours to be the best chance of getting to them. And so most of the time, as an architect, there were only one or two people I was competing with in my market. But I've talked to other professionals who are on the site who do things like, plumbers and electricians and so forth, who have the experience you did, where they routinely, Thumbtack says, well, 12 people responded to this or whatever. But it also tell you how many people did they reach out to. It also tell you how many responded. So if I got a lead that says they've reached out to 6 people but no one's responded, I would respond to that immediately, because that gave me the chance to get in front of them first. But if it said 6 people responded and 4 have already contacted them, I'd eat the lead and go on, because there's no way, they've already talked to 4 people. The chances of me being, rising above the cream to the crop there and getting through to them was slim to none. But what they do is they set up a chat room, and you could text back and forth to them. Again, it looks like instant messenger on Facebook, if you're familiar with that. They could share pictures with you, and then Thumbtack would also send you their phone number. And so I would always respond, "Hey, thanks for reaching out. When would be a good time to talk to you about your project?" And then I would send them my email, my cell phone, and my website. And 9 times out of 10, John, that person would text me back immediately, because they were probably still on the website, and they'd respond back, "Oh, I would love to talk to you between 10 and 11 o'clock tomorrow morning," and I'd immediately set up the appointment. And my close rate on Thumbtack had to have been 75 to 80%. It was really, really high. Now, one of the reasons for that was I was a professional licensed architect on the website, and Thumbtack did a really, really good job of designating me as a licensed professional. They were able to separate me from the unlicensed designers. And we've talked about this on another video where, part of my problem as a licensed architect in North Carolina is I'm competing with people who don't have to be licensed to do what I do. But Thumbtack made that designation. And then that was one of the first things I always talked about when I called them back. Say, hey, I kind of borrowed your line and say, I'm going to be more expensive than anyone else you talk to today. My hourly rate is $150 an hour, and that's at least $60 higher than anyone else you're going to talk to. But here's the reasons why. And either in text format or on the phone. And towards the end there, I was doing it in Zoom or FaceTime. If I could get a face-to-face with somebody, that was even better. Modern technology allowed that. But I would tell them, hey, I'm straight up more expensive. But here's why. And you mentioned it before. You actually closed more deals telling people that you were more expensive. For the contractors who are out here listening to this, that's incredibly valuable advice. And for the homeowners, don't be afraid if someone tells you that. If they come right out and say, hey, we're more expensive, there's a reason for it. It's not just because I want to make more money. It's because I have more credentials and I bring more value to the table. And Thumbtack allowed me to do that. House did also, but Thumbtack was really, really the kind of the bee's knees when it came to it. But here's my issue with Thumbtack. There are also a lot of tire kickers out there, especially people who didn't know what they didn't know. So they go on to Thumbtack and they say, I need, the biggest thing is they often confuse me with structural engineers. So they'd say, I have a cracked, or I need a new foundation. And Thumbtack would automatically assume that meant they needed an architect. And they would send a lead to me. And I'd call them back, and they'd say, yeah, my basement's cracked. I need to pour a new foundation. I'm like, okay, I can't do that. I'm not even licensed to do that. You need a structural engineer. And because I had them on the phone, I would go ahead and refer them to a structural engineer. I've got several that I worked for. But I paid $35 for that lead, and I got nothing out of it. So I'd call Thumbtack, and I'd say, hey, your software misallocated this to me. And they're like, yeah, but you talked to them. You called them back. Why'd you call them back? It's like, well, I called them back because that's the right thing to do. I'm a professional. I'm going to tell them they need another professional. I can't do their work for them. And if I didn't call them back, if I didn't respond to it, Thumbtack assumes that I'm not interested in the job, and I get dinged on my response time. So I called everyone back. I got to the point where I knew it was going to cost me $20 to call these people and say, I can't do it. But it was worth the $20 to make sure that Thumbtack knew I responded to that inquiry real quick. But I also found that when I called these people back and said, hey, I'm an architect, you really need an interior designer, you really need a civil engineer, you really need a structural engineer, maybe you need a plumber. They really valued the fact that I would call them back. And they would go into Thumbtack and leave me a glowing review, 5-star review. And they would say right in there, I'm not going to do business with Steve, but if he calls you and you need an architect, you need to talk to this guy because he helped me out. And so Thumbtack really kind of figured that nuance out. They leveraged a lot of selling techniques and the ability for people to kind of develop relationships. So Thumbtack is really good. And I found Thumbtack because I Googled myself. You talked about going into Angie's List and doing it from the homeowner side, which of course I've done before too. I think I actually tried to, one time I tried to find you as a homeowner on Angie's List, and we started discovering the nuances of how Angie's work.
That must have been one of those times I was mad at you or something.
Probably, yeah, which is, happens from time to time. But I was trying to figure out why you were talking about SEO and getting your website up. I couldn't figure out why my website wouldn't even be, never mind at the top of the page. I was on page 9 for architects in Greensboro, and there aren't that many architects in Greensboro. I should be in the top 5 or 6 based on your word searches, but I couldn't figure out why I was getting pushed down. And then one day I realized, wait a minute, the top 4 or 5 returns in Google for Greensboro architects are Angie's List, Home Advisor, House, and Thumbtack. And that occupied the top of the page. There's no way you can compete with it. And then inside of Angie's List, they listed architects who didn't do residential design. And Angie's List didn't care because they paid for the listing. So you've got huge commercial firms in there that don't do residential design. So if you called them and wanted to do a home edition, they'd say, well, we don't do home editions. Why did you call me? Well, I called you because you were the #1 ranking on Angie's List. Well, Thumbtack figured this out. And so they started catering to people who weren't successful on Angie's List or Home Advisor or House. And I found my name on Thumbtack. I wasn't even a member yet. And they were in their they were kind of like Nextdoor. They were kind of in their infancy at the time. And they were just simply going out and finding websites, designers who had cool stuff in their portfolio, which I like to think I do. And they just started listing people. And they were smart because I went out and found it and I said, wait a minute, what's Thumbtack? So I went to the Thumbtack website. I was like, first of all, what are you and why am I on you? I didn't pay for this. And I quickly realized, okay, this is an organic search. They figured out that eventually I was going to see that I'm on Thumbtack. And they got me for a professional subscription. And the thing with Thumbtack is it's actually not subscription based. You pay for the actual lead. If I don't get any leads that week, I don't pay for anything. And I can actually set a budget, $100. So they'll give me 4 $25 leads for the week, and then it shuts off. And I'll be honest with you, when I was in private practice, Thumbtack was extremely valuable to me. And I quickly generated more work from Thumbtack that I could do. So you get to the point where actually you have to turn people away, or you say, hey, I'm busy, I'm out 6 months, I'm out a year. And if it's a really, really big job, here's the process of how long it's going to take me. But 9 times out of 10, I'd say that if I got to talk to somebody on Thumbtack, I got that job. But I did have some issues with Thumbtack up front about their algorithms and figuring out how to associate me with professionals in my area. And they've since gotten that worked out, and they've done a really good job. But on the homeowner side, just remember, the second you put your information into the computer, somebody is paying for it. That's just the way it works. In fact, I have I had a page on my website that was heavy with SEO related to Thumbtack. I was hoping people would they would Google Thumbtack and my website would come up. And on that website, I would say, hey, if you go to Thumbtack and search for me, I'm going to have to pay $30 to get your phone number. Instead, just call me off the number on this page. And that actually worked a couple times. I had people found me that way rather than having to go through Thumbtack, or they text me and say, "Hey, I found you on Thumbtack, but I also found your website where it told me not to call you on Thumbtack." So, and
Let me give you the downside of Thumbtack
yeah,
that I had, because I had nowhere close to the luck you did. And I'm not saying what you got was luck. I mean, obviously you got it a lot with your experience, and you explain that. But early on with Thumbtack, and I don't know if it's still this way or not, you would collect as a contractor credits.
Yep.
And credits would actually allow you to contact a lead that was interested in a service that you provided. So say there was now granted, I started out as a home performance contractor, and then about 4 years into it, we opened a handyman division. And we were doing small home repair. We were doing anything from, screen porches to bathroom renos, decks, did a ton of decks, we did the soup to nuts. And we got leads from Thumbtack for the soup to nut trades. So we would get a lead that would say, all right, this is Joe Blow at 123 Main Street in anywhere USA with a zip code and a phone number. Or no, they would filter out the phone number unless you would actually accept it.
Yeah, you have to accept it first.
Their credit.
They wanted your money.
But when you accepted the lead, they would not give you the phone number until you provided certain information about the services that you were going to provide that homeowner.
Yeah.
And one of the things that it would ask you was what your price was going to be on that particular lead.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, you're asking for a deck. That's like asking me what the price of a window is.
Or what's the price of a car?
It could be $120. It could be $860.
Yeah.
I don't know how many square feet you want. I don't know how high the deck is. I don't know if it's treated lumber. I don't know if it's composite. I don't know if it's what type of railing you're using. You could be using treated lumber. You could be using PVC. You could be using aluminum, glass rail. Yeah. You could be using any number of configurations that could make this deck anywhere from $1,200 to $120,000.
Yeah.
So there's no way that I can give you a price on your deck. For one, I haven't been to your house. And two, you've specified nothing in terms of what you were actually wanting on your deck. So it just got to the point where, even on small repairs, I need a drywall repair. Okay. Square footage. Is it a ceiling? Is it at the top of the wall where we need a 16-foot ladder? Give me some information.
Yeah.
And the problem is it was set up for the homeowner that didn't know any better.
That's right. They didn't know what they didn't know.
They didn't know what they didn't know.
Yep.
So the disconnect is it didn't allow you to contact that homeowner and build a relationship and actually ask the questions that needed to be asked to qualify that homeowner for the project that you were going after. So, I probably, and I'm not embellishing this, Steve, I probably paid $50 towards Thumbtack before I just said, to hell with this. This is just a complete, utter waste of my time.
Yeah, I got it.
So, to what you were saying, certain platforms, and, before we wrap this whole thing up, certain platforms are going to be better for certain trades.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing that you have to keep in mind, whether you're a homeowner or a contractor in this thing. But the thing that we want to stress is, nothing that we've said here. Obviously, we've said a lot of positive and negatives about a number of different platforms out there. We want to make sure that you test this stuff out yourself, okay? And do what's right for your business model.
That's right.
Okay? And do what's right for your home. If you're a homeowner and you're looking for these particular quote unquote professionals, make sure that they're professional. Okay? Don't rely on these platforms who market themselves as dealing with only professionals and just assume that that's the case.
It's probably not the case.
No, well, You're right. In fact, we talk to a lot of them in these discussion threads that we're in,
Yes.
on some, Facebook pages and everywhere else. It's amazing the percentage of contractors out there that just don't have a clue
Yep.
of how to run a business. And you just need to be, as a homeowner, you need to be aware of those particular contractors and that they're out there. So I'm off of my my whatever they call it.
Your soapbox.
Yeah, my soapbox.
Well,
and I'll let you close it out.
Yeah, you actually said some really good things there that are very true. You have to study. You have to find a discipline that works for you. I did Angie's List too, probably about the same time you did, and I found that it sucked for me, so I moved on. But it worked for you, so you stuck with it. I found Thumbtack by accident. I figured out how to make it work for me, and it worked wonderful. And House was also great in its own way. So you just got to find the things that work. Make sure you're not wasting your time on something. And remember, it takes time to figure these things out. I probably used Thumbtack for about 6 months. In fact, I almost quit them because I kept getting stupid referrals. People they're charging me $15-20 for somebody who, really just needed someone to help them hang a light bulb. But I stuck with it, and the customer service kept saying, well, the idea is that you might you're not going to score on every lead. They say we kind of keep our prices low so you can afford to lose $15 or $20 here and there, hoping that you land a big job and help offset it. And that's more or less the way it worked out for me. But anyway, we're not going to rehash all that. It really boils down to what works for you and what gets your business the most exposure out there. But again, if you've got any questions about what we've done or want to elaborate on what we've said here, and send a comment, send us an email, and if you've got an experience out there that you've had, we'd like to hear about that too. If you've got something that worked for you, tell the rest of the Housemasters universe what worked for you.
Who's to say that your particular experience couldn't be an episode later on, or 6 of them?
We'd love to have you on the show and talk to you about how you might have done this differently and invested John and I in cracking the code. We're extremely interested in that, but we won't know that until you tell us. So, in the comments below, send us an email, let us know. Subscribe to the channel. We've already given you the plea for donations, so I won't go over that again. But again, thanks for joining us on this video, and check out the rest of our portals. We got a lot of stuff up there right now, and John and I are working on some more things. If you like this, share it with the world. So until next time, appreciate you hanging out with us. See you on the next slide. Peace.
Don't forget to like our video and subscribe. Leave a comment or question while you're at it. Your support is very important. Visit www.homeprojects.com to donate via PayPal or GoFundMe. Thank you!